Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. Happy New Year and all the best to you in the future. And since we're talking about it and we'll get it out of the way right away, thank you so much to everyone who supported me in the past year. You guys are all amazing. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming down the pipe for this year. I hope that it comes out to be just as good. And if you want to support me, again, we'll get it out of the way right now. Easiest way to do that is just hit the subscribe button. It's totally free. It's right down there in the corner. That would help me a whole bunch. So now, let's get to the video. So to my right is my 2017 Mt Wildcat Trail. It's a 700. I've had it for just about a year now, and it's been a great machine. I took it out for a 10-day excursion with some guys, just off-grid, so I don't have a whole bunch of videos. I got a couple of pictures though. I should have done more video, but again, like I say, I was off-grid. I was trying to just unwind and just stay away from anything electronic and just enjoy what the Northern Ontario region has to offer. So many trails, so much good stuff that I did. This thing goes absolutely anywhere. It's a great unit, but during that trip, I did come up with a small list of things that I think I need to do to make it more suit me. So one of those things is the suspension. Suspension on this thing is amazing. I just find it's a little on the lower end because of the length of the wheelbase. I was scraping a couple of spots. I'm talking, this is extreme, like rock crawling kind of stuff. So I think it could benefit from an 1.5 to 2 inch lift. An easy way to get that is with bigger tires, of course, which that's coming down in the future, hopefully. What I do plan on tackling is hopefully a suspension lift. So let's get it up in the air and see what we're talking about. So before we get started, I'm just going to grab a measurement so I can get a baseline of where we're sitting now. So I'm just going to kind of make sure that everything is settled front and back. Just going to stand on the back here. Ooh, and hopefully we can get rid of that creak. That's terrible. Okay, so according to the service manual, right at the back here underneath the hitch, we should have a measurement of 10 inches. So we've got, well, we got more than 10 inches. We got about 13.5. And that makes sense because I ended up having to crank these up a little bit because with the cargo box I have, I carry a lot of stuff. And with everything in it, before I left for the trip, it was sitting at 10 inches. So let's keep that recorded, so 13.5. And I think I might keep it that way because of the stuff that I carry. So in the front, should be at 10.5 under the skid plate here. And that's about right. So that's good there. So now we can pick it up because we have a base measurement. I also recommend, guys, if you're going to pick up one of these Wildcats, make sure you tie it down at the front to the lift because it's very tail heavy because that's where all the weight's at. Not much going on up here, so if you're not careful, it will actually flip off the lift, and that's not a good day. Up front, this is what we have for a shock setup. It's a Fox shock. It's an excellent shock. It works absolutely great for everything I needed to do. The only downfall to this setup versus the Elka Stage 5s is there's no, the only thing you do is preload adjustment. There's no rebound, there's no any of the other adjustments that you can make. And there is a kit available to lift these machines. And I want to discuss that right now because I want to know what you guys think about it. So for the front, what they do is right up here is across the whole machine to the other side. There's a bar that comes out and then you have your little adjustment and they just relocate the upper shock mount and they drop it down just a little bit. And that's supposed to give you about 2 inches. Now for the back, they don't do that at all. In the back, all they end up doing is they add a spacer between your locking rings here and the spring itself. So I got to thinking, what if we add spacers to all 4 corners? I mean, it's pretty inexpensive and I'm super cheap. So that's what we're going to try today. We're going to do like a DIY kit. We're going to take all 4 shocks apart. We're going to take some measurements And we're going to add a spacer. Haven't figured out quite yet what I'm going to use. I'm thinking maybe PVC piping, because that's pretty, again, inexpensive, and it'll do just fine. It won't rust. So let's take a shock out and see what we get. You don't have to remove the wheel, but to make it easier for everybody to see, and even for myself for reaching inside, I'm just going to pull the wheel here. For a lower shock mount, all you need is a 10 mil, because it's actually just... Let's try that again. So, just need a 10, because it's just a bolt with a spigot. Pretty simple. And then I'm going to grab one of these. You guys remember these? Old school ratcheting? I don't actually have my newer stuff here. All my good stuff's at work. So, just going to ratchet that off. Don't lose your big washer, because you need that. And up top, you're going to need a 15 for the nut and a 13 for the bolt. So again, I'm going to use my old school ratcheting. See if I can get this going here. Oh yeah. Now we can pull the bolt out, hopefully. Alright, now this should come right out. There you go. And we're going to give the shock a little bit of a clean, because we're going to have to remove all of the threads here. And I don't want any, or remove the nuts through the threads. I just don't want any dirt or anything ruining the shock body, because it's only made of aluminum. Because these shocks actually weigh very little, and they're super awesome. So just make sure they're nice and clean before we get to work on it. Shock is all nice and clean. I wiped it dry. So here it is on the bench, and there's a couple of things that we need to do before we disassemble. What you're going to need is I'm going to have just my whiteboard here to make some measurements and record them. So a piece of paper and a pen is fine for that. And if you have a wrench to loosen off the spanner nuts here, that'd be the best thing. I have one. You think I could find it? No way. I've been looking everywhere. I think it's actually in the bike somewhere, but it's on the lift. And I'm going to take it apart the way you guys probably would at home if you don't have one of those, and that's with a good old-fashioned cold chisel and a hammer. So before we get started, like I said, we'll take some measurements. Because I like the ride quality, I want to put the spring rate or the preload the same as it is. So we're going to measure from the bottom here to the bottom nut, sorry, to the bottom of the shock, which is exactly 2 inches. I'm not sure if you guys can see that on camera, but it's exactly 2 inches. Now, hopefully the fronts should be the same, but we're going to mark them. And if they're slightly different, I'll probably end up cutting the difference in half and then going with that. So we're going to mark here. We've got our left front, and that's 2 inches. I'm going to mark down from bottom, because sometimes I might forget where I measured. Now, what we're going to do is release the pressure on the spring so that we can remove the spring, because there's a little slot right over here, and that's going to allow the top cap to be removed. So very gently tap away this way and hopefully break this free. It's turning, so that's a good sign. There you go. See, didn't take very much. Broke free. And this is why it's important to make sure that the shock body is clean, because like I said, it's aluminum, and you don't want to have anything ruin those nice threads here and cause a problem in the future. Break that free. And then now we can do the same thing with this other one on the top. This might be done easier in a vise, and sometimes a little bit of penetrating oil helps things slide too. There you go. So now it's loose. The spring in here is release its pressure. Now we can remove the collar at the top and then remove the spring. So there you go. Now this would be a good opportunity if you wanted to paint these. Now would be the time. And I might actually do that, because I kind of like the white, but it's starting to rust on the inside, and I might give it a nice little clean up. and maybe a coat of paint, just for the sake of doing it. Although, since I'm at it, maybe green, because Arctic Cat green would look maybe pretty cool. I don't know, comment down below. What do you think? Should I keep these color, or should I change them up? Now that we have the shock, we can actually make another measurement, and that would be the shock body. So let's go get a caliper and properly measure that so that we can slide a nice collar down here. So with our digital caliper here, we've got it zeroed. Now this doesn't have to be super accurate, but you want it to be close enough to the shock body so that your collar that you're going to go make doesn't end up sliding over the spring or the lock nut. And apparently my tool's acting up here. Maybe my batteries are low. So I am getting 1.6 inches. So 1 3/4 inches is probably work. And if I look at the outside of this nut, I'm also looking at 2.4 inches. So you want something that's not going to be too much bigger than 2.4 inches, but you want something that's going to slide over the collar. I should also, this is a little thicker, I should measure this as well, because it needs to slide down, of course. So this is just a little plastic protector so that when the spring goes up and down, it doesn't scrape up on the shock body. And this is 1.8. So it should be at least 1.8. So let's go scouring my shop and see what I can find for collar making. Alright, surely I must have something here. Well, this is where the Big Bear resides, and that's where the good old Triple sits too. We don't have enough snow yet, so that's why she's parked in the back. I did plow once though. So anyways, Big Bear's running really good. But over here, I do have some leftover piping from different things. So let's see what these are measuring. Let's see, internal. Just shy. Yeah, just shy, 1.5. Okay. So I'm wondering, what about the outside? What does that measure at? Maybe a coupler would work. So let's go to the store, see if we can find something. Because I'm thinking PVC piping would be ideal since it's got a decent amount of sidewall. And it would probably give it enough rigidity for what we're doing. So hopefully we can find something that we can use. Let's see here. Perfect. Check this out. Alright, so let's see if these actually work. I mean, I measured them in the store. I brought my little tool. And for literally $6.73, these might work perfectly because they're 1.5 inches. Now, I don't know if I need to go this tall to gain the 2 inches I'm looking for, but yeah, so I am going to have to, so there's a little ridge on the inside. I might have to grind that down or take this off, but I tried earlier off camera and these are on there real tight. And I think I'd end up breaking them. So I think it'd be easier if I just grind that down and slide this across. But this, I think, will fit just nicely into the ring here. And I think it's going to provide what I need. So that's pretty neat. One thing I should also mention too, it's a good idea before we reassemble everything to inspect the shock itself to see if there's any damage. This thing was running perfectly fine. It rides really well. So, I mean, there's no damage to the shock body. The shock is working works great. Seems to be, that's, okay, it was working great. Oh, no way. No way. Guys, what in the world? I think this shock needs a rebuild. Because look at that. There's nothing there. This should be, oh. What? How is it running so well? Like, how does it ride so well? I mean, I guess the travel compensates for a bunch. Maybe just this one. What? No, that's, look at this. How much is that? It drops. That's a 2 1/4 inch drop with nothing. There's nothing here. And if you guys remember, last year I had the same issue on my Yamaha. The front skid shock was doing the same thing, and I had to replace it because it was acting weird. But I didn't feel it on this machine. It felt okay. So, okay, let me think about this for a minute. So the shock is low, because if I put it upside down, it works as it's supposed to. But if I flip it and I wait a second, it just falls right down. And this is how you have to mount it. You cannot mount it the other way. But here, it does that. Flip it around. It works perfect. Awesome. Okay, so after doing a little bit of research, I guess some of these shocks, I guess they are rebuildable. I don't have the tools here to do that. So, and they're sealed. Now, from what I understand, they need about 200 psi of nitrogen. I actually cannot see anywhere where you would do that. They do say in the operator's manual and the service manual they're sealed from the factory, and you shouldn't open the caps because obviously it could be dangerous with that amount of pressure. So, with that being said, I'm left with two options. I can try and find a shop nearby, send these out, get them rebuilt, or I can maybe upgrade to the Ilka Stage 5s if I can find some at a decent price. Actually, this again, comment down below. What would you guys do? Clearly, I'm trying to do a DIY rebuild, lift kit, sorry, because I'm super cheap. So, but it rode well. Honestly, this thing rides good as it is. Maybe for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and do what I wanted to do and see how that goes. And I'm just gonna keep an eye out for now. But again, what would you guys do? Maybe I'm lucky. Maybe it's just a one. But I'm gonna do all four corners the same way as I'm gonna do this one, and then we'll take a measurement, see how it looks on the ground. Well, let's keep going. Let's put on some PPE, and we're just gonna go ahead and grind away that ridge inside, so we can fit it over the shock body, and yeah, see what it looks like. So there's one. Now let's see if it fits. Beautiful. Just the way I wanted it. So that's awesome. We're going to get rid of this sticker because I can't return it anyways. A little bit of parts cleaner for the gunk of the glue. Even though I'm being cheap, still got to try and make it look factory, right? Okay, so now we're going to bring this all the way down because I got a feeling we're going to need it for the reassembly. I'm going to drop this back in, and seeing now that I might have to rebuild these, I think I might hold off on getting doing the paint work on the springs just now, because it might not be worth it. So this looks like it might be a little bit tall. Oh, you know what? There's one measurement I forgot to make, and that's an important one. I forgot to measure the the spring itself under tension, under load, so that we can bring it back to that between the two measurements. Luckily, I only took one side apart, so the other side should be pretty darn close to where it should be here, because then I can determine whether or not we have to cut down here, like cut our little spacer to get to what we want. So let's go take a measurement. Alright, so we don't have any load on the shock, but because it's relaxed, seeing that it's in the air. But the shock, the spring I should say, itself comes in at exactly 12 inches, 12 and a half inches. compressed width here. So if we have 12.5 inches with our little spacer, theoretically that means that we should have the proper spring preload, and then we should be okay. So that's good. What is this? Oh, come on, really? What is this? Okay, now that's gonna bug me. This is what happens. You start playing with one thing, you end up having to do other things. That looks like a wheel bearing, guys. Oh, that is most definitely a wheel bearing. Ooh, maybe I should have checked the other side too. Well, it's like everything else. You do one side, you do both, right? So since I got it up here, that's got some significant play, but I do have quite a bit of miles. Okay, so back here, oh, where'd I put my measuring tape? Found my measuring tape. So I need to compress the spring 1 inch, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then if I do that, I won't have, so this is a little bit concave so you gotta do a bunch of measurements here, but if I do the 1 inch, I think I'll be okay. I think I'll be right where I need it to be. So that's going to be fun. So let's make sure, first of all, that this is all the way down, because that might help. Oh yeah, let's see. Oh gosh, that is going to be crazy. Oh yeah, see, let's bring that back up. I don't think this is going to work for me. Alright guys, that was super sketch. I didn't record it because of that, but I got the collar back on, so that's all good. All I can say is that I had to use my farm jack here because the farm jack's got the top, and I was able to compress it without losing any fingers or eyes or anything like that, because when you start doing something real sketch like that, be careful, guys. Get a proper spring compressor. They're not expensive. This is what I had at the time. It worked, but I don't recommend it. Now, with that said, more importantly, do we have the same preload as before? And actually, we have a little less. So we could, which I'm actually going to keep it like this, because like I mentioned, so the plan is to ultimately get about a 2-inch lift, and I was going to let it sag a 1/2 inch so that I would get a better ride. So now we have an extra 1/4 inch here. So we're at 12 3/4, whereas before we were at 12 1/2. So I'm actually going to leave it right as it is. I'm going to do the other side. I'm starting to wonder if this is even worth all the effort, because maybe I won't even gain a lift at all. In my mind, it should work, but then when I start looking at it, I'm like, well, will it? Maybe it won't even do anything. But I mean, it's got to do something if that's what they're doing in the kits for the rear. So just haven't quite figured out how that works yet. So what we'll do is the same for the other side. And we're gonna put it back on the ground, take a measurement, see if this was all worth it. Oh, and one thing I should mention before I put them on, one thing I am gonna be doing is all these bushings that go into the shocks, like in the mounts, upper and lower, I'm gonna be cleaning them all up, making sure that they're free of debris, any dirt, grime, and I'm gonna be putting a grease or something in there, something fairly thick, but something that's going to prevent it from creaking like the rear you heard earlier. Okay guys, let's see. This is the right side. Is this one going to be the same as the left side? Let's find out. Right now, cross our fingers here. Nope. Are these supposed to be like this? Do you guys want to comment down below? I don't think I've played with a shock that does that. Like this. This, again, let's take a measurement, see if it's the same as the other one. That's a significant drop with nothing. Yeah, again, it's like 2.5 inches of nothing. What happens if we turn it upside down? Is it the same as the other one? No, see, it works. That's so weird. Anyways, let's carry on. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see if the front did anything. I mean, I'm not gonna go play around with the back until I find out if this is actually worth it. So let's drop it down. We'll take the strap from the arms off, and then we'll maybe compress the suspension a little bit to get a good measurement like we did earlier. So here we go. No pressure anymore. Actually, no. Now that I have it here and I look at it, when I push down, it is a little bouncy. You don't feel it in the cab, but it is bouncy. Anyways, let's grab the measuring tape and see what we got. Okay, let's take a measurement here, close as where we were. All right, there you go. So we actually lost a 1/2 inch. And that kind of makes sense because the preload on the spring, we ended up going a 1/4 inch more, a little bit more relaxed. So what I'm going to do now, which is why we took a measurement earlier, is we're going to bring these back up 2 inches to where they were, and then we'll see what that does. So let's put it back up in the air because it'll be easier without any spring tension on it, and then see if we can crank them up to the 2 inches like we had them. There's the 2 inches. So let's lock that in. There you go. Now the only concern is, I mean, I talked about it earlier, I was trying to avoid making the spring rate different so that I would maintain the ride quality I have. But this is not going to do that. This is going to make sure you're going to get, well, hopefully you're going to get the ride that you want, or the height that you want. But we've just lost 1.5 inches, which makes perfect sense because this is 1.5 inches. So the spring rate's 1.5 inches. I mean, really all you're doing is you just don't have to spin this up. I mean, you can probably just spin this up to the top and get the height you want without having to go and buy these spacers, which is probably what I should have done in the first place in retrospect. I'm really hoping it doesn't make the ride harsh, because if it does, I'm gonna have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, so we got them both dialed back in to 2 inches, back on the ground. It feels higher. And that is stiffer. That's 100% stiffer. I mean, you can actually see it bounce up. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But let's go underneath and measure to see what we gained. Well, would you have a look at that? We have gained 1.5 inches. So, again, that makes perfect sense. Our spacer is 1.5 inches. Our height gain is 1.5 inches. So, that's cool. I mean, this gets the height that I was looking for. Unfortunately, I think it's going to come with some compromising because it's stiff. All right, well, there you have it, guys. That is method 1 that I'm going to try to properly lift my Wildcat without compromising the ride. That is really what is key for me. I want to make sure that this thing still rides the way it's intended to, and at the same time gain a little bit more ground clearance that I could use in some situations. If I rate this particular modification on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the easiest, 5 being the most difficult, this is probably a scale, probably 2, honestly. You don't need a lift to be able to do this. You just need a jack so you can safely lift the front to have access to remove the shock, and then at that point you can put it in the spacer. Now, is it even necessary to put a spacer? Let's talk about that. I don't think so, because all you're doing is you're just cranking up that shock or that spring, and then you're just adding more preload to it, and that's what's going to give you your height. So you don't even need to go to the hardware store and spend $6.73 on spacers, because you don't need them to do this. Now, if I continue to crank it up, I'm actually going to probably gain a little bit more ground clearance until, of course, the A-arms are maxed out. Which brings me to the conclusion, I don't think I'm going to keep it, because I'm going to probably take these out. But, I mean, honestly, guys, it's pretty stiff. You can tell right away, because it just bounces right back up. I just don't think it's going to be comfortable. The other thing is, I'm happy I did this, because without having taken those springs off, I would have never known that both my front shocks appear to be low on oil. Today's tip of the day is, well, do your research. I mean, clearly I did some research, and I went my own way when I should have probably just bought a kit in the first place. It would have saved me some time, but I never hate learning something new. And this is new. This is something that we can all learn from. This is something that would work in a bind. However, if you're trying to keep the geometry, you're trying to keep the ride quality, you're trying to keep things kind of the same, this is probably not your route. So again, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to have a couple more videos on this particular unit shortly. I got a wheel bearing to do clearly as well. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with the shocks yet. That's kind of a bummer, but that's what the comment section is all about. So thank you for watching. Hope you liked it. If you did, give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and I'll see you all in the next video.